Sabah al-Khair, good morning, dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni, and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English-language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Bringing you the news and views and the untold side of the Palestinian struggle for freedom from a Palestinian perspective. Good morning, Robert. How are you doing?
So I'm very, very well. I've been injured, haven't been able to run for a few weeks. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to start running again. So that is my exciting news. How about you?
That is exciting news. No, I'm in lockdown as usual because we're in Melbourne, but getting closer, mate. I'm double vaxxed and hopefully everybody else is moving that way. And
I'm double vaxxed as well.
Well done. Robert, we're joined by a fantastic Palestinian journalist, American Palestinian journalist, mostly Palestinian, but has been in America, Mohammad Kassim. Mohammad, how are you today?
Doing very well, thank you. Excited to be with the two of you, and I am double vaccinated too.
Oh, have a look at that. The triple. Perfect.
Triple double.
Yes.
Be all right if we were Michael Jordan. We can make some money out of a triple-double. Mohammad, this is the first time you've been on our show. One of the things we like to introduce to our audience, our new guests, is for them to give us their Nakba story. What happened to you and your family in 48, 67 to get you to where you are today?
My story is no different than the story of millions of Palestinians whose parents and grandfathers were uprooted from their villages and were pretty much, some left in historic Palestine, other left, moved to the occupied West Bank and Gaza. And my parents left Palestine, went to Kuwait for a while, and that's where I was born. And from there, we immigrated to the U.S. My father is from a small village west of Jerusalem, one of the few, if not the only village that still exists despite having its people uprooted from it, Lefta, which is under threat of being transformed or sold for high rises by Israel and for new Jewish neighborhoods. This is something that is heart-wrenching. It's really, sad to see even our memories being destroyed in front of our eyes. My mom is also from, raised here in Jerusalem. They got married and went to Kuwait. That's when they had me, and the family later decided to move to the U.S. for to secure a better future for their kids. And I think that was really great decision that they made, even though it wasn't easy at the beginning. And no matter where you go, Palestine will always exist in our minds. We will never forget where we came from. And, our parents made sure that we don't forget those members of our families who were left behind. So, and also being a Palestinian and the story of our lives, or even my life, contributed to the profession that I am in now. I think telling the story of the Palestinians truthfully, accurately, objectively, independent of any outside, pressure or bias is extremely important. Watching as I grew up in the U.S., how the Palestinian narrative was told really made me want to make sure that our story is told fairly. I know that there are millions of people out there in the US, in Australia, Europe, everywhere that want to hear our story. One of the biggest injustice that has in modern era and modern history that's been inflicted on us Palestinians.
You're Kuwaiti-born US citizen. How do you get into Jerusalem?
Well, I am a journalist and I'm, based here.
On an American passport? Or?
American passport, yes. And I work for an American news agency, and I'm based in Jerusalem covering the Middle East. And this isn't the first time that I've covered the whole region. I mean, after finishing school in 2008, I joined the PBS and a few other, and after that other news agencies. And because of who I am and because of my interest of the region, I've always covered this region. And that's how I continuously either come here, I'm living here, and I continue to cover the region. And I still go back to the US where my my family still live in the US. But again, I mean, this is a region that is continuously, hot, and there are so many endless stories that are happening here, whether in Afghanistan, as we are seeing it right now, or in Iraq, in Yemen, in Palestine, Libya. This is a region that is full of stories, and will continue to be, and that's why I'm covering it on the ground firsthand.
Do you have to have an Israeli permit to do your journalism?
Only if you want to cover the government topics, or if you want to visit the Israeli parliament, or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That's when you have to have or obtain a government-produced journalist card. Other than that, you're free to go around and cover the stories, and how the army and the security forces react. That's a whole different story. But aside from having to obtain this card that's called GPO, this allows you to be in government buildings, and you can cover the official official news of the government. Other than that, you don't need to have a card to be a journalist here.
Are you able to film the soldiers, doing things that they do on a daily basis without a reprimand?
Listen, I mean, it's a very tough situation, and I think one of the most dangerous conflict zones in the world, or areas to cover here. We've been harassed the last few months during covering the situation in Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. We've been harassed. We've been, some journalists were pushed around. We've had tear gas canisters thrown at us, and we've seen what happened to Al Jazeera journalist Jafar al-Budairi. Her wrist was broken, I believe, or her arm. Stayed in a cast for a while. So we've complained, and I'm not so sure that really complaining does any good. I think you just know that when you're covering, especially the Palestinians here and what's happening, that you're basically taking a chance. And even you're asking a question on a day where I'm planning to go cover the occupied West Bank, city of Ramallah, where they're planning a protest later on today against the Palestinian Authority and President Mahmoud Abbas. And we were told that we should wear shields only to protect ourselves and to show that we are journalists. So we get it from everyone. We get it from the Israelis. We get it sometimes from the Palestinians. We get it from everyone. But honestly, covering the Israeli army, whether in Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in occupied East Jerusalem or in occupied West Bank, you're basically taking a chance. There is a chance that you may get hit by a rubber bullet, by a real bullet, be arrested. We've inhaled tear gas so many times that sometimes I feel like I'm immune, even though that's not the case really. And I felt suffocated so many times. But this is the story of every journalist, not just me. And the truth must be
everyday
told.
life in Palestine too, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, this is very little. I mean, comparing to what the Palestinians face, I mean, we journalists sometimes feel like that we're spoiled because we go out, we do the job, and then at the end of the day we go home. But it's the Palestinians, whether they're in refugee camps, in towns, villages, who are continuously being attacked by either the Israeli army or even the settlers, who are becoming very aggressive in how they living in the West Bank, and how they treat the Palestinian farmers and Palestinians who live in their own villages. So yeah, it's tough, but it's nothing compared to what Palestinians face day to day.
Well, without you guys, the stories don't get out. So I mean, it's an essential part of life for the world to be able to see what's actually going on over there, because Israel, as we know, does a good job at trying to hide the facts of what's going on. So there's a protest about the PA. Tell us about that.
Yes, the PA isn't very popular these days, and President Abbas seems to, him and the tight circle around him, seems to be living in an area by themselves and somewhat disconnected from the Palestinians. A few months ago, a Palestinian activist, an outspoken Palestinian activist, Nizar Banat, died after being arrested by a group of Palestinian security services from the city of Hebron. And he was beaten. He was basically viciously mistreated. and that led to his death. And there was a backlash against the Palestinian security forces in the PA after that, where Palestinians are demanding an independent commission to investigate his death, and they're calling on Prime Minister and who was or still is the Interior Minister to resign and to let an independent commission take over. That did not happen. But also there is increase in freedoms. We've noticed in the last few years that the Palestinian security forces are cracking down on freedoms. They're arresting anyone who goes out criticizing President Mahmoud Abbas and also the Palestinian Authority and certain members of the leadership. And Palestinians, for those who know Palestinians, at the beginning it wasn't widespread, but as these violations by the Palestinian Authority continues, we've seen these protests and demonstrations grow. And since Saturday, when people went out to the street in the middle of Ramallah, demanding to see what the results of this commission has produced, we're seeing Palestinian poets, thinkers, historians, scientists being arrested, activists, as if the PA is extremely sensitive to being criticized, to being questioned on what is happening. I mean, there's a deterioration in rights here in Palestine. There's a deterioration and there's a tremendous pressure on journalists, especially Palestinian journalists, not to report the news the way it happens. The PA is extremely concerned right now, and it's really concerned about its image and how it's perceived in the eyes of the Europeans as well as the Americans. So in defiance of the PA and its president, Mahmoud Abbas, and the security forces, today Palestinians are taking to the streets, especially in the middle of the city of Ramallah, just trying to voice their opinion and almost challenging President Abbas. I mean, if the Palestinians have challenged Israel for decades and the occupation for decades, you think that they will, be silent against what's happening by the PA? I doubt it. And that's what they are telling us. They basically want an end to corruption. They want an end to nepotism. They want an end to limiting their freedoms. And they're also, and this is really, I think, what bothers the PA is, we're hearing more and more voices from within the Palestinian community that they're calling on the international community to suspend any financial aid to the Palestinian Authority until there is an election, fair election, until corruption is tackled and it's ending, and they want to see fresh blood in the Palestinian Authority. So those who are benefiting from the PA, they're fighting back, and now Palestinians are not taking it anymore. They're fighting on two different fronts, it seems. On one side, they're trying to fight the Israeli occupation, and on the other side, they're trying to fight the Palestinian Authority, who seems, in the eyes of many, that's what they're telling us, that they seem to be doing the job of the Israelis.
We're speaking to Mohammad Kassim from Jerusalem on the situation in Palestine. That's been exactly the point of so many for so long, Mohammad, that the PA is a subcontractor for the occupation for Israel, that they'll continue to get money from the United States whilst they continue in that security role in protecting Israel from the Palestinians.
That's what many are saying, that they have to do an intifada from within before they do an intifada against Israelis, a third one. They have to cleanse the system. They have to be ready to do an intifada that is pure and the objective is clear. They think that the PA is standing in the way of achieving their dream of independence. And again, I mean, the way the PA has handled itself in the last 25 years and how it achieved almost nothing. In fact, that the Palestinians have lost a lot since the PA came into power in the early 90s. I mean, if you look at settlements, illegal settlements or settlements throughout the occupied West Bank, they're everywhere. If you look at the way Palestinian cause is being perceived now internationally, where Palestinians used to be looked at as their victims and their occupation. Now some people think that these people are live in their own independent state, which isn't the case. The PA basically, does the dirty work of the Israelis in terms of security coordination, in terms of lifting or taking away any moral and legal and even financial responsibility that Israel as an occupying power should have by doing its work. And Palestinians are wondering, what's the point of having a PA, a national authority, that really is not, its main goal isn't to bring us freedom and independence. It's basically, the occupation is continuing under the umbrella of national authority. So, we're even hearing now, not only people are looking for social reforms or financial reforms, they're now looking for political reform. And they say that the PA hasn't achieved what they were told it will achieve within the first 5 years of the Oslo Accords, and that they should just do away with it.
So from here for the PA, I mean, look, I don't understand the politics completely like, obviously you guys, but President Abbas in 2005 came into power for 4 years. He's 85 years old and he's still there. Now, that to me just sounds ludicrous in itself. But from here, can the PA, does it need to be dissolved or can it rejuvenate? Does it change the way it looks? Where to from here?
Well, that's a great question, Robert. And I think, I can't speak for all Palestinians, and I'm just trying to kind of convey what the Palestinians here feel and tell us as journalists. But I have to tell you that President Abbas came into power in 2005, elected as president. His first term ended in 2009. And ever since then, he's been basically ruling with an executive order. He done away with the Palestinian Legislative Council a few years ago. In fact, it hasn't been active.
And that held him in check, didn't it?
Yeah, it hasn't been active since the division between Gaza and the West Bank. And, the judicial system is it's in chaos. It's no one knows exactly. President Abbas basically appoints all the judges and they implement whatever policies and laws he wants, or if he signs executive order, they basically give it the legitimacy that he's looking for. So it's a one-man basically show, and he's the one in charge. I'm not so sure if he's the only one in charge. I think there's a very tight circle around him, maybe 3, 4, maximum 5 people who advise him and sometimes make the decision on his behalf, and they get his approval. And that's why it is almost impossible to do any reforms for the Palestinian Authority. And the main Palestinian faction, Fatah, is in shambles. Fatah is not a unified faction anymore. There are so many different Fatah. There is Fatah Dahlan, there is Fatah Nasr al-Qudwa, there is Fatah this and Fatah that. And that also doesn't vote well for the Palestinians as a whole, and it doesn't vote well for the Palestinian Authority, which Fatah makes up basically, when you say the PA, it's almost like you say Fatah. It makes up the majority of the PA. So is it too late to reform the PA? I'm not so sure. This isn't a question for me to answer. I think it's for the Palestinian people. And for those who I speak to on a regular basis, feel that the train has left the station and that PA should be done with, and there should be a new system. What is that? No one knows. Maybe there should be an election to revive the PA. I don't know, but I think that the Palestinians are desperately in need for elections, in need for new blood to lead, because this young population, whether in Gaza or in the West Bank, is desperate for a brighter future. And it doesn't look like this brighter future is going to come under the rule of the current PA and the current Palestinian leadership. And one thing I'd like to also add, that if you look at the average age of those in the PA, it's above 65 or 70. So those can't really work with the young Palestinian population that is highly educated, that is looking for a better future. And they're basically longing for an independent state where they can flourish and produce.
We're speaking to Mohammad Al-Kassim from Jerusalem on the situation in Palestine. One thing we have to say, Mohammed, that's very important. Whilst this slide from hope and the PA and democracy into what we have now, a perpetual dictatorship, this was by design. The Oslo Accords were designed to create a Vichy government, to entrench the settlements, to allow more settlers in. And it was based on a notion from the Zionists that eventually we would give up. What they didn't realize was this is not within our vernacular, that we have learnt from the experiences of 48. And one thing we got out of May was the Unity Intifada, when Israel was doing its latest Turkish shoot in Gaza, in Sheikh Jarrah, Al-Aqsa, that, Palestinians everywhere within 48, in Gaza, in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, but also in Lebanon and Syria and Jordan, around the world, we all were jumping up and down in support of the Palestinians. The fact is they haven't been able to get rid of us. They haven't been able to box us in. At some point, they're going to have to pay the piper, we say. And that's going to need some representation. Is it, the sense is, a reconstitution of the PLO to be more democratic, to be more representative of people? What do you get as a sense of what tomorrow looks like? Is there any thoughts about what tomorrow looks like from a leadership point of view?
Nobody knows. And I think one of the biggest, I don't know if it was a mistake or by design. I personally think that it was by design. President Abbas worked so hard at weakening the Palestine Liberation Organization, and also even weakening Fatah, so he could strengthen the small circle of officials within Fatah, maybe Central Executive Committee or just the Palestinian Authority. And that really hurts the Palestinian cause and the Palestinians in general. The PLO played a major role in making sure that the Palestinians are not forgotten internationally and that their cause is out there, in the United Nations and throughout the world. And you hardly hear about the PLO anymore, even though Abbas is the president of the PLO also. He's the president of the APA. He's the president of Fatah. I mean, he's the president of everything. And that does not allow for diversity. That does not allow for diverse opinion, for disagreeing with him. And really, you don't hear that many disagreeing voices within the PLO. And by the way, the PLO does not include every Palestinian or faction. And there has to be a major restructuring or reform to the PLO to be really the only but inclusive representative of the Palestinian people. Is that the case now? No, I think, again, I don't want to say anything that is controversial. Hardly, there isn't really a leadership, a Palestinian leadership that could come out and rise to the occasion and lead the Palestinians. I think one of the things that really also hurt the Palestinians is having so many factions, and their loyalty is in the wrong place. I mean, walking around, you see people are more loyal to their factions rather than being loyal to to Palestine, to the cause. And I think that is also one of the major negative things that happened to the Palestinians in the last few decades, and weakening the PLO, weakening Fatah, weakening people's loyalty to the cause, and shifting their priorities from working to get rid of the occupation to basically being more interested in, or at least putting them in such a situation where they have loans to the bank and they just want to take care of their own families, and they feel that the PA doesn't care for them or for the cause. So therefore, why should I worry and go out and protest when the leadership is doing nothing, and people feel that they have to pay the price, the ultimate price, for someone else. So you have to have someone that could come up, rise to the occasion, either lead the PLO, lead to major reform of the PLO, and bring everybody in, and also shift priorities, where people actually back again focusing on the real issue here. And that's not going to happen overnight. That's not going to happen with just planning elections. I think we have a generation that is unsure if its leadership really cares about it or not.
Such a sad slide, and our people deserve so much better, Mohammad. Mohammad, I know you were in Sheikh Jarrah. Can you give us a sense of where things stand at the moment? We know the Supreme Court in Israel has sort of kicked the ball down the road a little bit. No decision has been made or going to get passed. What's the situation like in the sort of last 3 or 4 minutes in Sheikh Jarrah?
Well, basically the situation now is on hold. People are still in their homes, those who have not been kicked out of their homes yet. The Israeli Supreme Court has basically put the whole situation on hold, put the whole situation on hold. Things are frozen, and stand still until either the next court date or until something huge happens. Sheikh Jarrah, what was so interesting about it is that it kind of reunified all Palestinians together, and basically it reawakened the Nakba in the hearts and minds of Palestinians. And Palestinians said, no more, no more. Our parents, when my father left, he was 10, 11 years old. And when he died in 2009, but he used to tell us that, I even remember my grandfather used to say when we visited him that, yeah, we thought that we were leaving and coming back. They didn't even take a thing with them, so people said no more, that they're not going to you have to really do something outrageous to force them to leave home. And I was in Sheikh Jarrah in 2009 or 10, I believe, I think 10, when the first Al-Kurd family was forced out in the middle of the night. And I remember a dear friend of mine, God rest her soul, Amal Al-Kassim, who died a couple of years ago, whose daughters now live in their home in Sheikh Jarrah. And it's heartbreaking to see Nabil Al-Kurd and his daughter, Mohammad Al-Kurd, Mun Al-Kurd, and all these families. And it's not just the Al-Kurd family, it's 28 families here we're talking about that live. There's this nurse, mother who's a widow, and she has her children with her, 6 children, Atiya, who told me that she sleeps with her jilbab on and her documents and the most important stuff in a luggage, piece of luggage next to her bed. So when she said, when they come to kick me out, I just want to be sure and ready. I don't want them to see me in my nightgown. I don't want them to see me in my pajamas. And I want to be sure that I have all the documents that I need before they pull me out of my home. This is what's happening right now in Sheikh Jarrah. People still waiting. I think it's a game of let's see who can last longer. I think it's dangerous for people to forget the focus. It's not only Sheikh Jarrah, by the way. Sometimes we tend to forget that there is Silwan also and other places. But Sheikh Jarrah kind of put the focus back again on Jerusalemites and the major injustice that Palestinians face on a regular basis, whether in Jerusalem or in the West Bank and Gaza. But again, right now the situation is on hold, and they're hopeful. They say that they have all the documents that they need, whether from Jordan, from Turkey, from the PA, and their lawyers are working hard at making sure that they are not forced or get expelled from their homes. The Supreme Court made an offer to them, which was immediately rejected. The court wants them to be treated, or offer them to be treated as protected renters or occupants of these homes, that after a generation or two, the rent is over and then they can move out. And that's something that they vehemently rejected. So let's see what happens next. But it's still, the situation is still in the courts, in the Supreme Court, and it's on hold right now. Nothing has really been done about it.
So how can our listeners get a hold of your journalism? Have you got a particular platform that they can go to?
Thank you so much. Whether it's the Media Line or a Middle East bureau, journalism is extremely important, not just for Palestinians, but for the world. If journalists spoke out freely before the invasion of Iraq, the Middle East would be different. If journalists spoke out before the invasion of Afghanistan, the whole world will be different. I give a shout out to my fellow journalists who work hard and put their lives in the palm of their hands, and go out and tell the story firsthand, objectively, independently, and accurately. That's why I give a shout out to my fellow journalists who work extremely hard, risking their lives to bring us the stories from around the world, especially our region.
Listeners, go to the podcast page. You'll be able to find a link to Mohammad's work and to those organizations to support him. Thanks so much for joining us, Mohammed. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening today, listeners. Don't forget, there's never been a better time for a free Palestine.